Welcome to the Ladies Talk Show. Guys, we're in chapter 2. We're on the top, the bottom of page 38 in Marriage Secrets, and we are going through. And one thing I wanted to say, a lot of people have said, where are the sources, whatever. Marriage Secrets has 220 Torah sources. What you find them, you just like turn to the bottom of the page and you'll see where to find the thing, the footnotes. So there's 220 sources in there from the Torah that inform everything that I'm giving over. Okay, just so you know. Okay, we're going to start. I'm going to read a section and then we're going to start with the questions. Everybody, okay, everyone here, we're all good? Somebody's missing. There you go. Here, everybody here. Okay, fine. Okay, let's see. So now this is page 38 in Marriage Secrets. Okay, beware ye old defense mechanisms. Can you see the thing, Sarit? I can't see you. If I hold the book up here, I can't see you guys. All right, whatever. Okay, before we explore this further, I want to tell you a story. After an out-of-town lecture I gave, the Rebbitzin called to thank me and to give me feedback, much of which was positive, Baruch Hashem, but she also told me an amusing anecdote. One woman who attended the lecture called to say that my whole line of thinking was far too generalized. A short while later, another woman who attended called and said that while she enjoyed the talk, she felt it was far too specific. It is a true story, I remember this. That she wished I had made more sweeping generalizations that applied to a broader group of people. We both laughed at the comical juxtaposition of the two women giving opposite criticism of the exact same lecture. I can't win, can I? Right? Hello. So why do I tell you this story? Because as you may have noticed, this book is not a cookbook, nor a book on how to crochet. It covers material that can trigger emotional defense mechanisms, meaning that people reject an idea impulsively as a defense against a challenge to their well-worn habits. It's a knee-jerk reaction, impulsive, no, what you're saying couldn't possibly be true. And even though I have many students who say that this material has changed their marriages and their lives for the better, I'd bet that most of them would also admit that in the beginning, some of the concepts were quite challenging to hear. I think it's important to know that it will often take time to adjust to the contents of this book. Okay, is that everybody? Yeah, good. I'm pointing out this defense mechanism pitfall for a very important reason. That way, if you don't like anything I have to say, I can always attribute it to your defense mechanism that are coloring your obviously incorrect opinion. And then I put joking. She let me keep that. That's great. I have a nice editor. Okay, joking. But seriously, the real reason is that the more you understand what might get in your way of internalizing these ideas, and I should have written these ancient, wise, brilliant, it's from the Torah, it's not Leah Retimer, these internalizing these ideas, the greater the chances that you can use these tools to their best effect. Maybe they were just trying to give me constructive criticism, but if the woman who phoned the Rebbitzin were using one concern, however legitimate, to disregard the entire contents of my lecture, that would be sad. But in reality, that's a common tactic we all sometimes resort to when faced with change. Deriding something is the fastest way out of having to do the work on improving our behaviors. Ouch, that needs to be a meme. Alana. Deriding something is the fastest way out of having to work on improving our behaviors. Like, I don't need to do that. That's a stupid idea that the rabbi said, or the Rebbitzin, or this book. Got it. Understandably, we are all attached to our own way of doing things, and it's much easier to discount advice than it is to take it. Okay. And yet, while I have been, that's better. That's more comfortable, right? You can read the title, so you're happy with me with that? And yet, while women's desire to grow and change, I also know that the Yetzer Hara, evil inclination, will stop at nothing to make sure we don't have the opportunity to grow in Shalom, a truly holy ideal. As the Mishnah states, Hashem did not find any vessel to contain a blessing for the Jewish people other than Shalom. Shalom is under constant attack, and we need to further educate ourselves and do everything in our power to strengthen ourselves so that we can triumph in this area. The bottom line is, Try your best to recognize when your own defense mechanisms are causing you to prejudge an issue and reject it prematurely. Then try to give the concept a fair shot, mulling it over and taking actions as if the concept were valid. Then you will be adequately equipped to truly judge if it helps to bring more shalom into your marriage or not, meaning try it at home. That gives you the best chance of success, and in the merit of your efforts, may you be blessed with assistance in this most crucial endeavor. Okay, what is the true nature of a woman? I recall sitting in a boardroom. The table was made of thick blue glass, the chairs were black and steel monstrosities, and the carpet was shimmery silver. A big man in a big suit sat barking his opinions at me as everyone else nodded their heads. I remember having an overwhelming sensation of wanting to rush to my husband's side. Just as quickly as that feeling, meaning they were all intimidating me and he was barking order and whatever, and everybody was, on his side, and it was me against the whole world. And I just wanted my husband to, just as quickly as that feeling came forward, I rammed it back down into a little box and nailed it shut. I stood my ground in the meeting, and my recollection is that I prevailed in the negotiations. So how did I come to embrace that part of me that longed to be cherished? How can I now shamelessly acknowledge my own desire to have my husband's unyielding approval? Is this true? Is this true? I can't say, women have such a hard time with this, especially, as a businesswoman, I was a broker. Hello, I wanted his approval. I can't say that it was a quick or easy process, but I came to the realization that just as I trusted our sages' guidance in matters of halacha, meaning Shabbos, kashrus, everything, I followed our sages' advice. So too, shouldn't I begin to learn to trust them in matters of the heart? It didn't seem to be intellectually honest to just blatantly ignore the following sources. Okay, you guys ready? Ready? I'm going to give you some sources. The Chazon Ish writes in a letter, the nature of a woman is to enjoy finding favor, to be cherished in her husband's eyes, and she constantly yearns for this. That's the Chazon Ish. This is a gadol. The Stipler Gaon wrote a similar idea in a letter. It is well known that a woman's hope in the world is to have a husband who loves her. Could this really be so? Was I truly being told that deep down that's what I really wanted? Either they were wrong or I was very out of touch with my feelings. From what they were saying, it's as if God himself put this yearning into our DNA, that he made it so that being cherished by our husbands is the sustenance that fuels our entire body and soul. I'm going to read that sentence again. I want you to take it to heart. We're going to try this at home this week. He made it so that being cherished by our husband is the sustenance that fuels our entire body and soul. Years went by before I was able to admit that perhaps there might be a little truth to these statements. And as hard as it was for me to acknowledge, there was a tiny part of me that was glad to finally give myself permission to feel cherished. As I let a tiny crack of light in the door, the contentment of being cherished overwhelmed me. This is much more easily felt than described. So I leave it to you to discover for yourself. But while my need to be cherished made me feel vulnerable, since I was fearful that my husband might not deliver, I also realized that it expressed my truest, deepest self. It was such a relief that I could finally stop pretending that this need didn't exist. Now I could progress toward actually getting this need met on a daily basis. Okay, questions.
Okay, from Naomi. I'm a newlywed, and a big source of contention for us is how to split visiting our families, whether it's for the holidays or other occasions. Most of the time I'm worried about the conversation, because you're now saying that we need to give in to our husband and allow him to control. Is there ever going to be a time where it's going to be in my favor?
Is anyone else following this? I'm not sure I'm understanding her specifically.
Meaning you're saying that a woman should give up control and she should go with what her husband is saying. In order to get cherished, she needs to really give her husband the ability to cherish her. Her issue is that when it comes to picking whose family to go to, If she's always going
I
for her
see.
husband, she's getting left behind in a sense.
Right.
And
Okay.
definitely not feeling cherished.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is actually, there's a stage where, let's say right now, before a woman understands that control, this to stop fighting for control. Okay. Then she learns to stop fighting for control. And then there's this window of time where she's teaching herself to be less and less controlling of her husband. And there's this, it's actually a lifelong a lifelong work that she's going to be doing on it. But when she makes that shift, then there's this period of time where she keeps giving in and doesn't see any benefit to herself and feels unheard and like she's not getting her way about anything. So the first month or 2 or 3 or 4 of letting go of control is simply the hardest. That's the hill that we all need to climb. Okay. So that is the hardest time. What happens during that time is she'll let go of this, and she'll feel like she has no voice and she has no whatever. After her husband, she's given over so much control of her husband. After about 3 or 4 months, she'll say, okay, well, we're going to go to your parents or my parents for the yuntif meals or whatever. And, he'll say, what do you think? What do you want? It's like, I know some of you women who have very controlling husbands or can't even imagine him saying, what do you want to do? What's your opinion? What would you like? But that when you turn over and give your husband all the control, the first 4 months is going to be tough. And then you'll get to a place where he'll always want your opinion. Not always, not on everything. He'll say, this is the car I'm buying. And you'll say, but, and he'll get, that's what we're buying, and you go, okay, fine. You want the Tulsa that, now I have to drive a Toyota because you wanted the Tulsa or whatever. Nothing wrong with the Toyota. Oh gosh, I'm going to get politically. I love Toyotas. I love Tulsas. I don't want any problems. Okay. But I'm just saying that's the transition that you have to go through. And it's work. You will have a voice. Once you stop screaming and controlling and elbowing him away from the steering wheel of the ship, okay, he will turn to you. And that is a guarantee. If it doesn't happen, call me, let me know. I'll try and figure out what else could be wrong in the situation. But I've never, in many decades of teaching this, I've never had a woman who said that, she just kept mavater and letting him go and he didn't eventually start to look to her. And that's a Gemara. If your husband will bend down to listen to you if you don't try to control him. Just make him the king, keep doing it, bite your tongue, for that first 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it takes until he gets that you really are giving him control. You are going to have less of a voice, and live with that for a while because there's a big payoff coming to you, guaranteed. Okay. Next one, Sarit.
Okay. So Esther says, I'm a prisoner to being defensive. How do I listen to my husband and take what he says to heart, even when the criticism he's giving is constructive, but it's hard for me to hear?
Well, you asked really 2 questions. One question was how not to be defensive. And the other question is, how do I deal with a husband who's overly critical? Okay. So we need to handle both questions. So the first question about how not to be defensive, the scariest way to do it, some people rip off a Band-Aid and some people pull it off slow. So if you're ripping off the Band-Aid type, I'm going to tell you how to do it. Then I'll tell the slow Band-Aid to your people the other way. Okay. So ripping off the Band-Aid quick is the fastest way to not be defensive, is to tell your husband in a quiet time when there's no issue on the table, not in the heat of the moment, not when you're arguing, not, whatever. After that, when you're having quiet time, and believe me, when we go through Marriage Secrets, we're going to talk about how and when to talk. And how and when is a lot, can be a lot more potent than what you say. So we'll get there. But right now, you're talking to your husband. He's totally listening to you. And you say, I have an issue. I'm not sure why I have this. I've kind of looked at my past, maybe my family of origin, or, maybe I was hurt and by in a prior, a friend hurt me very badly. And so now I'm not sure why, but I get very defensive. And when you say certain things, I can't even almost hear what you're saying. I just immediately get like, "Ugh," and I immediately get mad. I would put my shields, defense shields up, So what I'm not sure what we need, what we can do about this, but I do feel when I get defensive, it makes a distance between the two of us. And so I'd like to, I'd like to figure out a better way to, when I feel defensive, would it be okay? Maybe let's start with this. Give them a couple of choices of things, of how to handle it. When I get defensive, if I tell you I'm feeling defensive right now, if I tell you that, but I don't want you to feel, bad and wrong, or like I'm not even hearing you because I'm shoving you away and I now have a key to just shut you up. I'm not meaning to say that, but what else can I do? Do you have any other ideas, dear husband, of what I can say or do when I feel defensive? So that's the ripping the Band-Aid way off, is just going right for the jugular, telling him right away exactly how you're feeling, being vulnerable by telling him, admitting on yourself, telling him not to take it personally. That's if he's not attacking you. And if he is attacking you, say, I feel attacked. I'm not, how can we deal with this so that I don't feel attacked? Maybe do you want to write it down on a piece of paper and hand it to me rather than telling me something? So work that out. That's ripping the Band-Aid off. A slower way to get over the hurdle of, if you're a defensive type person, is if you are defensive about, let me just think of an example. Oh, you're cooking. I'm just a stupid example. Oh, this needs more salt. This needs more whatever. And so you are defensive. It's really perfectly fine for him to say it needs more salt, or he doesn't like too much pepper in it or whatever. But you're a highly defensive person, and you can't sit there and say, I feel you can't rip off the Band-Aid and just go talk to him. What you can do instead is you can write down in your own journal times when you feel defensive. It might be a little hard, but you could say, when my husband makes puts down my cooking, when my husband accuses me of something I didn't do. You write them all down, and then think of something you can say as a response to it. So he says, I don't like the salt. So instead of giving him the silent treatment, or feeling badly, have a sentence that you say to yourself. When he says, I don't like the salt, say, I had to have something bad happen today. That was, I'm glad he only told me he didn't like the salt. I didn't have a car crash or whatever. Think of things you can say to yourself. Okay, I think we spent enough time on that, but that just gives you places to start and grow yourself in those areas. You can read articles and books on that if you're that type of person. Getting to your second question about, you have a husband who's overly critical. So there's actually in the Torah, if the men were taking a class, a husband is never supposed to criticize his wife. Not ever. Not ever. So the men on staff who are listening, you take to heart, you can never criticize your wife. Now, if it has too much salt or too little salt, let's say it has too much salt, soup, too much salt, you eat the salt, delicious salt, delicious salt. At the end of the night, you say, I love this. I love the soup. That chicken was fantastic. I love the rice. And this is, again, if the woman is doing the cooking. In most households, the woman is. But if the man's doing the household, just fill in another example. I don't want to get accused of whatever, of rules, rigid rules. But anyway, so I like the soup. I like the chicken. I like the rice. Everything was delicious. By the way, on the salt, I think I prefer it with a little bit less salt. I think it would taste better that way. So that's a comment. That's a, constructive comment or whatever. That's not, oh, this has too much salt. So a man is allowed to give his wife input. It's needed. I mean, that's how I became a cook. Is my husband, I made it to his palate because he has good taste, and that's how I perfected, to make him happy. It was a nice bonding thing of him, sharing what, if you put olives in this dish, I think it would really add spice, or add some, so it's fine. But it's how the husband does it, and how the wife reacts to it, and how. So I'm not talking to the men right now. I'm talking to the women. So what if your husband's critical and he's saying it's salt and whatever? You pull him aside, and you have in a good time. You say, listen, I really want to hear what you say, because I want to make the soup how you like it. But the way you do it makes me feel hurt. It makes me feel less than. It makes me feel like you're putting me down. So that's it. Okay, let's go to the next question.
Okay, so she actually, Khumi, put in terms of what you're saying, my knee-jerk reaction is to go straight to judgment of him. I guess that is my defense mechanism. That is how things escalate.
That was the same woman who was just talking.
Mm-hmm.
So she judges him in what way? Khami, can you write in what
Meaning
you?
that her knee-jerk reaction is to judge him, meaning whatever he's doing, she automatically judges him, and that's, in a sense, I guess, her defense mechanism. Causes everything
Okay, so
else.
that's good. If you know that about yourself, you know, you can actually tell that to your husband. You know, when you give me these harsh criticisms, you know, immediately go to judge you, and I put a defenses up, and it causes a lack of closeness in our relationship. Whereas if you said it differently, you know, maybe you could start off every time you have a criticism of me or a comment or whatever, start off, is now a good time to tell you, give you a little input, you know? And the husband will say, oh, I'm never going to remember to say that. And say, but yeah, it'll mean a lot to me if you could say that, because then I could say, you know, not right now, maybe tell me after dinner, after you've eaten all the other dishes and they're delicious, or something like that. This is a dialogue, ladies. This isn't a like you against him. This is like, how are we going to work together? I'm just showing you the example of how a healthy marriage and a healthy relationship will work. So you can work towards that in terms of, you know, he's not doing it to make you unhappy. And if you explain to him it makes you unhappy, and maybe doing it in a different way, it will make you happier, he's game. Unless you're always mean to him, then he'll want to be mean back. But if you try hard to be nice to him, he'll want to try harder to be nicer to you, even if it's not in his habit, even if it's not from his childhood of origin. If he saw terrible role models, you know, you're dealing with more. But God never gives us challenges that we can't overcome. And he was specifically designed for you. All of his characteristics, all of his traits, all of his quirks, all of his annoyances, all of the way he irritates, all of that was given to him, gifted to him by God to bring out the best in you. And same way the other way around. The fact that you talk too much, or you complain too much, or you wake up grouchy, or whatever the things you have are designed so that he has to learn savlanas, he has to learn patience, and he has to carry the yoke of his wife from the time he gets married. And, you know, women are challenging, men can also be challenging, but in a different way. But women, you know, he's carrying the yoke of you, and you have to carry the yoke of him. And that's part of growing together, and then communicating the little subtleties so that it can work better. And if you were to say to your husband, tell me, you know, before you make a criticism, say, you know, is now a good time to mention this to you? So 99% of the time, you know, he's going to forget to say that. You would too. It's so get permission from him before the fact. Say, when you forget to say the criticism, and you forget to ask that question, you say the criticism right away. Can I remind you, this may not be the best time to ask me? And your job is to snap right back in and say, oh yeah. Okay. And then he'll say yes, hopefully. But you got to convince him. Sell him on this idea, and that gives you an open communication so that he isn't constantly irritating you with you just being a victim to his criticism. Okay, let's go to the next question.
Okay, so Ricky actually says, where's the source that a man should never criticize his wife? I need to quote it and use it for my advantage. Ha ha ha.
Ha ha ha. So no, but I'm actually going to answer that, because I actually mentally I wanted to answer that. So this is not well known. You shouldn't expect it of your husband or demand it from your husband, but you can teach him how to talk to you to improve things you can't, in other words, he has to have the ability to give you input, but you are, as the wife, to use your Bina Yasera and your motivational techniques and your loving support techniques to get him to give you input in a way that isn't hurtful or painful. That's your job, because left to his own devices, he'll just criticize left and right. And maybe you're criticizing him. Maybe you need to grow in that area. This is, again, here we are, and here's where we want to be. There's always a gap between, a growth gap, so to speak, of where we are and where we want to be. Don't expect yourself to jump here, but grow towards that. So if you find yourself overly critical, criticize a little bit less. And if you do it 3 times a day, try and go to 2 times a day. If you find yourself about to say something like, did you need to put your shirt there? Say, did you want to go out for dinner tonight? Whatever. Teach yourself, grow yourself in mastery of yourself to grow yourself towards being the person that you want to become. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so actually, Chome came back on what she started. It's a very heated thing for her. She says, if he says something to me, I throw it back to him. Whoever came up with that term, constructive criticism, there's nothing constructive about it. So she's obviously feels that it's, yeah.
Right. Okay. So this could be her husband's bad habit. And look, everybody has to pick their battles. So some women I'm working with, they are working on their husband being less critical. Some are working on their husband, being more responsible about their family obligations. Some, there's like probably as many people as there are, as many things as there are people, each marriage, you've got your things to work on. If him being critical is keeping her from closeness from him, and it's, if she had to think of what would I like to improve in my marriage, and that's in one of the top 5 things, I'm going to tell her how to deal with it. But probably it's like number 42, but let's say she realizes that it's one of the top 5 things she wants to work on their marriage in terms of closeness. She needs to figure out, she needs to find articles or do a search or find a book or find a therapist or find a Rebbitzin or a mother or auntie, somebody she's close with that she can talk about. Listen, my husband's always criticizing me. Do you have any aids for me, any tips and techniques and strategies on how to make him criticize me less? If she finds he's only critical about food, or he's only criticized about what she wears, or it depends on what it is. If it's about food, say, listen, you criticize me a lot about my food. I realize, maybe I'm just not a good cook for you. We should start having takeout every night. I don't know what we can do, because the criticism is really wearing me down and hurting my feelings. And I want to be close with you, but every time something comes out of your mouth about it, it hurts my feelings. I don't know what else he's critical about. I was speaking recently with a woman whose husband is critical about how she keeps the house. His mother was a businesswoman and their house was spotless. But his mother, he can't remember his mother ever sitting down and doing a board game with him. Whereas she feels she said, I'm always on the floor. She said, getting up and down from the floor. I don't need to go work, exercise and go to on the treadmill. She said, I'm up and down because my whole day is spent playing, games and reading to my kids. And, she's very interactive in that way. But the house is a disaster. And her husband is critical about her every single day. And I advised her to have a conversation with, I don't have the feedback yet, but I advised her to have a conversation with him about, would he rather her do, have the house spotless and not be playing with the kids, or would he rather her be interacting with the kids more? And she said she thinks he would say he would rather have a neat house, but that's not what she would want. That would not fulfill her need of bonding with her kids, because her mom was, kind of an absentee mom or whatever. She didn't have a close relationship with her mom, and she, God bless her, wants a really close relationship with her kids in that way. I think people can have very, very close relationships with their kids without spending the day on the floor. Okay, so I'm not judging anybody or saying whatever, but in her mind, that is this putting that time in and that effort and being on the floor with them is very, very important to her. So I don't have a solution for her yet to talk to her husband. Maybe that'll work, maybe that won't work, but he's constantly criticizing her. So she needs to figure out where that's coming from. One thing she did say that was very telling in the conversation is that her father constantly criticized his mother. So that's a habit he grew into. So they might need to go for therapy with it. And I talked to her about that that could be something that's so ingrained. He probably would need the therapy to get over that, but she said he's not going himself. But if they go together and they work it through, hopefully they can make some progress. That would be the answer to that. Okay, we're out of time. This has been great, ladies. I'm so happy you're here with me in this very deep take at what it is to be an extraordinary woman, to raise ourselves up, to fulfill our shlemus, our perfection, our perfect, to be better and better, to go to be here and to work towards here. This is, you guys are heroes, superheroes, to be working on that route, to be the best person you can be. We're all in this together. I'm enjoying being with you very, very much. And here's to us all growing together. And we should all be blessed that we should grow in Shalom Bayis to 120 and have joy and pleasure in our lives. And may you be blessed for working on Shalom Bayis. It's making the whole entire world a better place. This is Leah Richheimer for the Ladies Talk Show. We'll see you next time.